Did you know that in the 80s, Honda made a two-stroke V-twin sport bike that would rival almost every single entry-level sport bike currently on the market? They did, and I got one. It is right here. A 1986 Honda NSR 250. And like all the NSRs that have ever made it to America, welcome to America, you finally made it, little guy. This is what they call a gray market vehicle. That means it was never intentionally released to America. Someone exported it out of Japan into America, and then they went through all the customs and title work and all that nonsense. So it was adopted. Now, Honda didn't just make an NSR 250. They also made the NSR 50, they made the NSR 80, they made the NSR 125R, they made the 150R, and the 250, and the 250 SE, the 250 SP, and the race-only NSR 500. Honda developed the NSR 250 so they could use their racing technology in a street platform, including its RC valve, which we're gonna get into in a little bit. So what this is this is the predecessor to the CBR bikes. The NSRs are all two strokes, where when they stopped the two-stroke bikes and they went all four-stroke, that's when they created the CBRs. The NSR came out in 1985 and stopped production in 1999. And they had a total of 5 different generations of the bike. And they were classified by MC numbers. You had MC11, you had MC16, which is what this one is, you had MC18, MC21, and then MC28. And each generation got more and more sophisticated until the MC28 actually had a card reader inside the dash, like underneath the gauges, that you can put in different programs that change the ignition timing, the power valve operation, the speed and rev limiter, all the parameters of the bike just by putting in a different card. It's pretty revolutionary stuff. Like a debit card or a credit card that was made for a game console. This bike was the perfect solution for a lightweight, high-revving motorcycle that was just a blast to drive. And it was made to compete with Yamaha's TZR 250 and the Suzuki RGV 250. Now, not only is the NSR a race-inspired motorcycle, it's also, and this is probably the coolest thing about it is, it's 100% street legal. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, the Japanese keep all the coolest stuff for themselves. We almost never get the best, coolest, most unique stuff. Now, when I looked up the weight for this thing, it had a pretty big range of weight from like 280 to like 340. Let's just find out right now what it actually weighs. 309 pounds, and it's pretty full gas. So curb weight, 309 pounds, which is incredibly light, probably about 110 pounds lighter than what a 600cc bike would be, and pushes out 45 horsepower out of a V-twin two-stroke, which is a configuration that I didn't even know existed until I bought this bike. I don't know of anyone else that makes a two-stroke V-twin, which is so cool. It's one of the coolest bikes ever made. Now, everything about this bike is built for performance, from its twin spar frame to its 6-speed gearbox. So let me explain what the RC valve is the best that I can to my understanding. RC valve is reed charge valve. It's a way that Honda figured out to dynamically control the reed valve for optimal horsepower at all RPMs. So the 4-stroke version of that would be variable valve timing. Optimal performance for every RPM. That's what they're doing with this. Hopefully that makes sense. So let me put this bike into context. This is a 1986. This thing weighs less and has more horsepower than a KTM 390 Cup race bike. And this was made 40 years ago. That's pretty nuts. Now, if you're wondering what this is a breather hose just for the tank, because it's assumed you're gonna be laying down a lot. It doesn't wanna build up pressure, so it needs some place to release the pressure. The 2-stroke oil goes in right here. It's got a little sensor to make sure that you have enough oil in it, so you're not gonna destroy the bike. And then it gets mixed into it right inside the carburetor, but you can see right there. Now, this would be considered like the regular version. They made 3 different models. They made the regular, they made the SC Special Edition, and they made the SP Special Production. And the SP had a lot of differences to it, including magnesium wheels, dry clutch, carbon fiber bodywork, a close ratio gearbox, fully adjustable suspension, racing colors and graphics, lighter frame components, upgraded braking system, limited edition bagging, and upgraded electronic ignition. Now, you might be wondering, how big is this bike exactly? Well, compared to a 600, it's about 110 pounds lighter. Let's hold it up to a 1000 CBR. Now you can see it's smaller. It's a quarter of the size of the engine. It's a quarter of the horsepower, but it's not a quarter of the weight. So it's not that much smaller than that bike. So a guy like me, 6'2", I feel pretty good on. I don't feel that different on this as I do on this. When I jump on that bike, it feels like a bicycle. It's just so incredibly light. However, there's nothing heavy about these CBR 1000s. I mean, they're also incredibly light. A lot of the biggest improvements, I think, is how the weight just keeps on going down on these things, and they just feel really, really nimble. They also made a Repsol Edition NSR 250, which I am trying to track down right now because that would look awesome. Let me just put this back here. And then possibly the coolest thing about this bike is what you find when you look down right here. It's not what's there, but it's what's missing. There's no start button because it's kickstart only. So what this means is it's a 2-stroke V-twin kickstart only sport bike. Like, how awesome is that? Also, when the battery's dead, like the battery's pretty much smoked, you don't really need a battery to fire it up. Let's go take this thing for a spin. I'm dying to see what it rides like. Before we go, let's do the words of wisdom. James 1:17. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. I think I ripped around this thing at the storage when we first got it running. This is my first time of actually riding the bike. And it sounds so good. Oh, I'm so pumped. I don't know what speed means. There's a speed light. I don't know what that means, but I want it. I'll figure out a way to turn that on. And then it's got neutral, high beam, just do normal other lights. Let's do it. There we go. Yeah. I don't know if it's still getting warm, but it had nothing at 1 and 2 and 3,000 RPMs. And then it kicked in, and it felt really awesome. It makes sense for a race bike to have a pretty extreme power band where it's all mid and high, because why waste power at low RPMs when you're not going to be there ever? There we go. The tough thing about riding a bike like this, and this is my first time, and I know this thing sat in a shipping container for a while, is I don't know what it's supposed to feel like. And maybe it just has 0 power at the low RPMs. I don't think it's running the way it's supposed to. There we go. So when you talk about motorcycles feeling light and nimble, it almost doesn't get any lighter and more nimble than this thing. I mean, this thing just wants to lay over and just slay it in the corners. It feels so good on a corner. Man, this feels nice. Like, this bike belongs at a track. And it loves the high RPMs. That's just where it wants to be. The incredible thing about these motorcycles is, if you've ever ridden a really fast bike, it's hard to say that they're fast because they're not. But in the hands of the right type of rider, it's hard to beat these things because they handle so well. The amount of momentum you can take going into a corner. And this is probably the coolest first bike you could ever buy. It's not gonna rip your hands off at a corner or accidentally do a wheelie. If you learn how to ride it right, you can keep up with anybody, but not in a straight line. Now this thing actually has a speed light that's slowing me down once it hits like 90 kilometers an hour. And it's running a whole lot better than it was before. You know what the other best thing about it is? Where on a leader bike, you'd be tearing up tires. And tires are expensive on a leader bike. On something like this, tires are cheap and they probably last forever. I've had the idea for a while of a bunch of guys getting together and just getting, you know, KTM 390s or Ninja 400s and just doing track days and stuff. And not having the fastest bike, but really learning how to ride the bikes really, really well And if you can do it, you can keep up with the leader bikes and you keep up with the 600 guys. This would be the perfect bike to do that on. Also, chances are, you're not gonna see anyone riding the same bike. There's only a handful of bikes that I can think of that would be more fun hitting really, really twisty roads than this bike right here. Like every time I see a corner's up ahead, my heart skips a beat. So I get to hit that corner. Oh yeah, now it's starting to go. This thing is really starting to wake up now. Either it was just cold or it was a little clogged up or something, but this thing is feeling amazing. Oh man, this thing is pulling really well. It's feeling great at the mid-range now. It was really sluggish at the mid-range. Oh yeah! So I don't know what it was, whether it needed to be warmed up or we unclogged something in the carburetor. But this is a different bike than when I first started riding. This thing is actually pulling pretty hard. I have never ridden anything the size of a 250 that moved like this motorcycle. This is incredible. I take back everything I said about this bike earlier. All right, Joe, try to keep up. Up. No, it didn't. No. Did I break it? It's still running. I went from this out of gas. Yeah. It's got gas in it. When it was running good for like 5 minutes, it was so good. Motorcycle tow rope. That's never sketchy. That's never the sketchiest thing you could do. Nah, I'm good. We're back. I don't know. Maybe it was like an air bubble or something. Maybe it was more out of gas than I thought, and it needed to be put on reserve. So I have to put this bike at one of the top 10 coolest bikes I've ever ridden in my life, and I need to buy another one. What I need to do is make sure I got some really sticky tires so I can really hit this thing into the corners, because this thing feels so good in the corners, but I'm taking it easy because I don't want to wreck it. I didn't really inspect these tires very well. I don't know how old they are. Oh my gosh, that's that power band. That thing, holy cow. Between like 6,000 and 11,000 RPMs. This is every bit of a race bike. Joe, watch this. Haha! I'm absolutely in love with this motorcycle. I think what happened was we ran out of gas and I put it on reserve, which means we should probably get gas at the next gas place. I've ridden much rougher feeling motorcycles. Like I feel no vibration in the seat. I feel no vibration in the handlebars. I just hear vibration. That's all. That's the only vibration I'm experiencing. So if I had to compare this to anything, the best comparison I could do would be like the feeling but better of a first gen Ninja 250, except it doesn't suck because it actually has some real power. Like this thing would wipe the floor with a Ninja 250. And I'm not bashing the Ninja 250, like cool bike, but as someone who's been riding for a long time, it serves no purpose in my life. But this bike, this could be my main bike. Like this could be my main squeeze right here. I would imagine this thing could do every bit of 180 kilometers an hour, which is maybe 110, 120, yeah, something like that. It could probably do even more. If me and all my buddies could all be riding NSR 250s, and that's what we rode on the street and we goofed around on, we would have more fun than if we were all on fast bikes. Significantly more fun, and we would be breaking the law significantly less, and the chances of anyone dying decreased significantly. This is a win-win. And even all the stuff I was saying earlier about it wasn't very quick at the low RPMs, that's all gone. It's all good. Let's try to do 0 to 60. 1, 2, 3, go. There. Man, that got there quick. The start was slow. I could do much better. I could do much better. Go. This bike is amazing. You don't need any more than what this thing is. As my friend Matt Walkster says, this thing hauls the mail. What a blast to ride. Holy cow. This bike is a rocket ship. So there's a moment when I'm riding this bike that I'm thinking, am I riding a 600? Because at the top end of the power band, it pulls so well. Now obviously, what this thing does in the first 4 gears, a 600 would do in first gear, but this is so much fun. I don't know if I've ever fell in love with a bike so fast. It's also incredibly comfortable. It's not like when you ride like a Grom or you ride like a Kawasaki 125 Pro where just, you know, the bars are here and you're in your knees and your thighs and stuff like that. It's pretty much a full-size bike. I'll admit I've never been a big fan of two-strokes because I never really understood them. And I've ridden some very heavily modified two-strokes that were like nothing, 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 everything. But when it comes to two-strokes on the street, I'm in love. Like, this is the coolest thing. And I have to recant most everything I said about this bike when I first started riding it, because this is a different bike than what left. Man, second gear at the top end, awesome. If I pulled back, this thing could power wheelie. That wraps it up. This bike is awesome. If you like this video, you might enjoy this video right up here. Remember, it is not what you're riding, but where you're going. We'll see you guys next time. I'm loving this bike, dude. This thing is awesome.